But cities are very important, and I'd like to remind you what Wellington Webb was saying when he was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That the 19th century was the century of empire, 20th of nation states, and the 21st century will be that of cities. And we see it by the power that the cities have, even in front of their mother state, because they can make their own decisions. Some of them can make their own laws. They can make some association and so on, and they find a power which was not even imagined in a few years ago. In these cities, we have to, in order to have inclusive and participative cities, we need to manage, we can discuss that for hours, managing the centralized top-down vision, the bottom-up participative process, and having also all these spontaneous and collaborative behavior that helps to build from scratch, from the bottom, from the real problem, some interesting and new solution to develop the cities. And we come back to the dynamic of citizen engagement and citizen participation. We have citizen engagement that need to be started from the city or from the governance, and then citizen collaboration to think about it and come back to the city and create value for the city through citizen participation. This is what we call all the area of the civic techs, which are the most interesting part of the smart city, I think, in the next year. What is the ecosystem we are talking about in the cities, and what kind of value? How can we create value? Because cities have to create value, otherwise they start dying. We saw that with Detroit, for example, and this is very hard now to have a renewal of the city. It is possible, but the problem of value creation of smart cities is very important, and this value creation has to be based on the economical exchange between all these types of actors: people, city users, with governance bodies, urban service providers, and economical actors. What you see is that you have people that are stuck with the city, which are governance bodies, urban service providers, and then people and economical actors that have the choice to stay or leave the city. And they are working based on what the city is producing as commons. Commons was originally about rural lands, woods, water, and so on. Now it is about urban infrastructure, but also quality of life, landscape, but also education, but also knowledge, information, data. And even concepts and ideas are part of the commons that the cities are producing and that they can make available for other cities through city networks. So cardinal requirements for the cities are not very complex. Before we think about technology, we have to think about attractivity, inclusion, sustainability, safety, resilience, and agility. And we have to think about what is the ideal city. If you look at the Detroit Declaration, which was at one of the last elections in Detroit, I don't know whether you can read the small words, but we are not talking about technology. We are talking about authenticity, creativity, sustainability, transportation, about services or values, services or things linked to the ethics that we are developing in the cities. There are some interesting work that we can use in order to evaluate how we can develop a blueprint for developing cities. For example, the Circle of Sustainability that are developing visions on the ecological axis, economy, politics, or culture. And they are developing a lot of different points that will not go through all of them, but each of them gives some direction that have to be independently explored and developed. So there are some tools. We can have some radar types, diagrams, and so on, and some processes that we have to follow. So that's very important if we want to have this comprehensive, holistic vision of the city to refer to this kind of methodology. So let me finish. I'm a bit late. Let me finish very quickly with some projects that we have in developing countries, and I took one example, which is in Morocco, where we have some different projects. The first one is about a solar energy in a house that can be used both for the house and for the public lighting in a country where the infrastructure is poor. Before we have a smart grid, we need also to have sometimes some easier way to solve problems. Architecture and of houses are also very important to have a flexible architecture, a flexible way of living, and so on, and providing a new kind of housing that can adapt to climate, that can adapt to different families or moving families. Taking care also about what is happening outside of the cities, because cities are not alone. They are interconnected with their rural surrounding areas, and also these rural surrounding areas have to develop. Otherwise, you will have most of the people going to the city. Most of the new cities today are slums. They are not smart cities. They are just slums. And what we need to manage is how to make those new cities not becoming slums, or how to make the slums that are in these new cities become places where people can live in a good way. Education also is part of the smart cities, and I will show you this, and this will be the last one, about this collaboration between this Moroccan University Hassan II in Morocco, and this university in India, and where they collaborated about e-learning and specially dedicated to education of women. So that's all for me. Thank you for your attention, and